Hello, this is Becca from Willow Hill Designs and welcome. I hope everyone is doing well. It's a chilly fall day today and here in the US, and it just feels so nice and cozy. It's a beautiful day for a fire. Um, but today I'm showing and sharing my finish for the Mossy Forest prompt with the Roxys Journal of Stitchery Field Notes project. And in my last video, I showed the start of this prompt, and I have finally finished it. I'm running behind. And for my new subscribers, this is my cover, the field notes. This will be the cover for my journal. We're really almost done. We'll be getting the third prompt for autumn, which will be nice. But the second prompt is finally finished, and this is the Mossy Forest. And in my last video, I shared that I had the trees begun. I had started the stitching on the trees, and so I have finished that. I did some outline stitches in a darker color to give them a little bit of definition and make them look a little bit rounder, in a sense, like that the shadow is there, that it is a round edge on there. And just added a few little extra bits of bark, something that might look like bark on them. And so then I thought I would add some leaves, being that it is autumn. This is the second prompt for autumn. I decided to add these leaves here. And I got those leaves from this fabric. I only have this little tiny piece left of this fabric, and I love it. I don't remember who the designer was or the manufacturer, but I love it. And so that's where I got those little leaves from. And they are a little bit big, but I thought it'll be fine. This is kind of like a little fantasy forest in a sense. And so once I got those leaves on, I decided to start working on the moss. And I had shown in my last video that I chose a wool crewel thread that I've used for different crewel pictures. And again, I'll link that video down below in the description in case you'd like to see that. But it worked out really nicely for moss. It had a little more dimension than the DMC floss, and I used two colors, a lighter, kind of an olivey green, and a darker olivey green. And I'll just show you a close-up of that. And so I just had begun the moss, and I said, well, I think I'll add these mushrooms in, and it'll make it a little bit easier for me to decide where to place the moss. And the mushrooms come from this fabric, which I had shared in my last video. And often I'm asked what fabric or who the maker or designer of the fabrics that I use are. And so this one is called Forest Friends Toadstools, the Henley Studio, and it's Maycower in the UK, United Kingdom. So I don't know if this is still available. A lot of times you can get these fabrics on Etsy or on eBay, but I still have a pretty good piece of this, and I loved it. The scale of the mushrooms was just perfect for this little page. So once I added the mushrooms, or I had placed them where I thought they would look nice, I just thought for sure there would be a fairy in this forest. I thought for sure that as I was out and making notes in my field notes journal that I would see a fairy. And sure enough, one had to appear. I have this fabric with these little tiny fairies on it, and I thought it would be so cute to put one here sitting on one of the toadstools. And of course I had to label and make note of that this is a fairy forest. And so I put her there, and she's all stitched on. The only thing that really isn't stitched on this page are the mushrooms. Those are glued on just because I didn't want to compromise the edges of this fabric. I just didn't want to see the little punctures kind of with the thread. And on the back of these little mushrooms, I iron a bit of lightweight interfacing. And then around the edges, I use fray check just because if I don't want the edges to degrade or the little image to degrade, I put fray check on there. And this is something you can get on Amazon easily enough, or in a sewing store, Joann's, I'm guessing. So don't tell anyone, but these are not, these are the only thing on here that are not stitched down. And so I wrote here Fairy Forest, and then labeled, of course, the moss and bryophyte. Moss is a bryophyte, which means that it doesn't have roots, doesn't take up the water through roots or a vascular system. It gets its nutrients and water from the air and the environment around it, which is really amazing and interesting, I think. And moss is shade loving in most cases. And so I just made a note of that. And of course, this is a hardwood forest. I pictured these to be oaks and maples and other hardwoods. So I just wrote hardwood forest here. And of course, in every forest, there has to be a little squirrel. So I decided to add a little gray squirrel in here. I have a very cute fabric with little squirrels and chipmunks on it, and the scale again was right for this. This is a tiny fairy in relationship to this squirrel who's peeking out, I think, at the fairy. And so I took a little artistic license and took a detour on this one, and definitely decided to create a fantasy moss forest, or mossy forest. So I just labeled this, again, gray squirrel on here, and I put my initials on here. And when I drew this the 23rd of October. So I'm running behind. I'm just not going to catch up with this project. I already know that it's been such a busy month. It's already November. Today is the 4th. Tomorrow is election day here in America. Oh gosh, everyone go out and vote. We need to vote. Such a beautiful right that we have to vote. So yeah, it took me quite a while to do this. It's November 4th. And I haven't even begun the autumn birds or bird, which I haven't. I'm thinking I will do a cardinal or a nuthatcher, maybe both. And I may begin that tonight. But yeah, I'm not going to catch up with this project from now till the finish for sure. So I also added a few pieces of some fabric with text on it. Just added a few little pieces in here because there wasn't really much room to put anything else. And I did kind of make the edges look a little bit vintage. Again, I've done that with each of the pages. I like the way that looks. And it depends. Sometimes I use antique linen. Sometimes I use vintage photo. Sometimes I use walnut. Let's see, I used, I think, vintage photo for this one, which is a Ranger Distress Oxide ink. And this does not run on fabric. I've gotten this wet and I haven't had any problem with it running. But I just take my little square brush. Let's see if I have it. Yeah. I just take my little square brush that I use for things like this. This isn't a good brush, as you can tell by the bristles. But I just touch the edges of this and just add this kind of antique-y look to it. So I went around and antiqued the edges of it, and that's it. It's basically finished. So I do love this. I love the fact that I kind of took a detour with this one and kind of indulged myself into the things that I like to add, like the little creatures and making it kind of a fantasy. But so thank you very much for joining me, and I'm wishing you many blessings, and I will see you in the next video with our autumn birds, whenever I get that done. So thanks and bye for now.